Hey, what's up? My name is Chime. I'm at the Disciple HQ, and today I will be breaking down my track Sidequest from the EP Sidequest on Disciple. So before I kind of get into this, welcome to Logic 9, the door that nobody uses, but I'm very goddamn used to it, so I'm going to use it. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. But yeah, so I guess we'll just go through track by track. There's literally 100 tracks in here. So I've kind of made an effort to make sure this doesn't crash, because it's Logic 9 and it's 10 years old. But yeah, let's start off with some of the drums here. So really nothing super special here, very typical kind of dubstep kick and snare going on. I tend to combine samples a lot more than synthesize my own. So for kicks and snares, I usually take the transient from one thing and the body from another, maybe the high end from something else, pitch it up and down, that sort of thing, and kind of see where that takes me, process the whole thing at the end. So yeah, that's kind of what makes them sound like that, kind of layers and stuff. Yeah, I have a bunch of different kind of high-end stuff. I've kind of put them all together into single tracks. That's kind of what they sound like, and I've got another channel for the hi-hat, just to make sure that kind of punches through on its own channel, and I could level that separately to the rest of the high-end stuff. Got a very simple crash that I use on pretty much everything, and that has a little bit of side chaining on there as well. Yeah, so I guess next up we can go to the effects. So on the build, the drums sound like this. So yeah, in there I've got like a kind of 8-bit shaker percussion. I like to use a lot of 8-bit sounds, as you've probably heard if you've listened to any of my music. Yeah, I think we got a rise here courtesy of Val, so thanks very much. I use a lot of samples from Splice, generally. So here we've got some chants over the drop. You know, very typical kind of chants there, and I think they switch up somewhere later on. Let's see. Yeah, like a kind of cutesy pitched vocal sample there. I quite like between different sections of the drop switching to different kind of offbeat things. I have a guitar kind of skank going on here as well. Like that. Yeah, so here we've got Lone Moon's lovely pre-drop vocal, which I've pitched up.
I'm on a Sidequest!
Which I love. Lone Moon does amazing vocals. Yeah, so that's kind of everything. Oh, I had a vocal sample that I kind of cut 2 bits together to make it sound like it's saying UK, because, you know, gotta represent the UK. So yeah, so I had just again from Splice, kind of just like a vocal where it hit that U sound, and I pitched that to E, which is the root note of this this tune, and I think I took a sample of someone going okay and just took the K off that. So yeah, that's kind of what that is. So next up, getting into more of the melodic elements. I have a huge channel here, which I've actually condensed. It was like 20 separate channels, just called blinkers, and these pretty much go throughout the entire track and kind of fill out everything that's going on. So that's how they sound in the intro, and then I've actually here kept how it originally is. Ooh, you're gonna crash? So yeah, Logic 9 is very old software. Oh, no, we're good. We're good. Okay, so I have some automation here. To change, I've got an echo plugin, and I'm kind of changing the wet dry, so it kind of becomes more apparent as we go along, and the color and the repeat, which means it kind of opens out from this very dry sound to kind of more of a twinkly sound as we move along here. Yeah, and then again, I export a lot of things to audio. A lot of the reason why I like doing that is because I can cut off kind of reverb and delay tails like that very easily. So, you know, it goes straight from this into another section of the blinkers. So this has a bit more effects going on. So I'll show you the actual MIDI of this as well. You would think it'd be like an arpeggiator, but actually I really like going in and mousing in each of these individual notes, because I really like that kind of 8-bit chiptune style. So yeah, you have the main notes over there, and then they're kind of supported by, I just picked some notes really underneath all this stuff. But it gets that really nice twinkly sound if you have kind of lots of little blips and pieces. And then on here I've got a stereo delay, which I've kind of offset from the beat. And that's to kind of make it twinkle in that kind of natural and kind of less rhythmic way, and become more of an ambience than like an arpeggio. So without that, oops, sounds like this. And then with the delay, kind of more twinkly. And then I've got the Valhalla Vintage Verb, which is just my favorite reverb plugin. It's really nice. Give it a bit more space. Of course, good old OTT, which, yes, does run on Logic 9, to fill it out a bit more, and then just a cut off of the low end. So that runs through this section of the track, and then I think I've taken a piece of it here and bit crushed it and kind of cut everything out. I quite like having a lot of those points in tracks where things cut out and then there's like twinkly stuff and then it goes back into the beat, so that's what happens there, and in context it sounds like this. Yeah, but I do a lot of things to this blinker channel over the course of the track. So whereas it's quite open and airy at this point, it cuts back to a more dry sound during this section. Still a bit of delay on there, but it kind of makes sense in context of the track. It's all open, and then it kind of closes and allows space for this lead to come in. And then over here, I think I have pitched it down an octave, which gives it quite a nice ethereal quality to it. I work in audio a lot, and I really like just seeing what things sound like when I pitch them up or down, or reverse them even, which I've done just before the drop over here. Yeah, so just a lot of messing around with the same sound to kind of fill out the track on the whole. It's also good to have a sound like this that just goes throughout the entire track, because kind of glues things together. It makes the track feel a lot more consistent, you know, because this goes from a very melodic section to a kind of wobbly section, and those are very different, but there's always this in the background to make your brain realize it's the same track, basically. Here we've got what I've called the Rayman lead, because it is a general MIDI sound font. So general MIDI was a selection of sounds that were used in a lot of video games because they would be loaded onto like the N64 and that sort of thing. So a lot of different games use this. This particular one really reminds me of the original Rayman game, so that's why it's called the Rayman lead, and it sounds like this. kind of doing that classic thing where I take this section and I copy it over here and then try and do a variation. So the melody feels like it's following the same kind of pattern, but there is some variation to make it feel different the second time around. So that's that. Here we have a kalimba sound, which is one of those kind of plucky African instruments. I really like using kalimbas and like marimbas and stuff because they sound like chimes, which is why, you know, my name is Chime. I like these kind of sounds. So that follows the main kind of riff of the track. But if I go into the MIDI, the way I kind of had that delay effect work is I picked specific chords out of this this riff to delay, and those are the sections where it kind of comes to a stop. So it rings out until the next note hits, basically. Whereas the main melody on its own doesn't have any delay on it over there. Yeah, and then that gets looped and I think pitched up. Yeah, pitched up during the build-up like this. And then pitches over here. A good way to make your build more hype is just think about how many elements you're putting in and making them all rise or fall in some way. Because the more elements that are going up, the more it's just like, oh my god, what is happening right now? Yeah, so that's kind of one of those things. Over here, second drop, we have second build, we have a steel pan sound, which also mimics that same riff, and I put like a ton of reverb on just a couple of the notes, so they kind of ring out and create a lot more space before the second drop, the third drop, I should say. So feels a bit weird just playing that on its own, but in context, it kind of sounds like this. So yeah, next melodic element is this Xylo marimba. I'm pretty sure this is another General MIDI sound font. I really like using those because I'm kind of nostalgic for a lot of those sounds, and I quite like the concept of nostalgic on the first listen to a piece of music, which does make a lot of sense because in order to be nostalgic, you need to wait a certain number of years for it to be like, oh cool, this thing from the past. But if you put in sounds like these, it's already like, ooh, this kind of sounds like that video game I used to play or whatever. So this on its own sounds like this. This is one of these sounds where they have a very short decay, as a lot of sound fonts usually do because they had to be put on like the SNES or you know, a very primitive console that can only take a very, very short piece of audio. So I've put the Valhalla Vintage Verb on here with a very long decay time and size all the way up to 100. To really kind of fill out the space and make it kind of ethereal. It's one of my favorite words. Like that, and then putting OTT on top of after a reverb plugin is a really good way of making that tail just ring out even more and really fill up whatever space you're trying to fill. So yeah, that's that. And then now we're getting into more of the kind of bassy section. So I have these chords here that in full sound like this. So yeah, this chord sequence has a lot of layers going on. So the first thing is a massive patch that sounds like this. Or not, apparently. Hello, Massive. How are you doing? Would you like to play? Apparently not. I'm not sure why that's not playing. Okay. We've got a combination of leads that are deciding not to play right now, but luckily I have audio, because thank God for audio. We have this lead here. Which is pretty gritty. It's a combination of two.
Harvey, would you like a drink? Hold it that way, the drink.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
And maybe a mouse pad.
Yeah.
That mouse pad over there just looks shit. Use that one. This is a
What
mouse
does it?
pad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Cool. Thanks. All right, carry on.
there's nothing in it though. So continuing. Jesus, that's off-putting. Okay, right. So we have this pretty gritty lead. Yeah, unfortunately, Massive is deciding not to play it, which is just fun. It's just fun. It's great. Yeah, but it's kind of a combination of, it's that typical 2 sine waves, 1 up, 24 semitones, and down 24 semitones, and then distorting. It's that kind of really typical sound that you've heard from like Zomboy and Must Die and stuff. It's very slightly different, and I've got 2 different layers, but it's that sort of thing. I'm pretty sure this thing that says chord MD exclamation mark is like super Must Die-ish, which is also not playing, so that's fun. Yeah, so those things that are not playing, which is fun, are also layered with this. I think there's something muted there. There we go. But this is the just really basic square waves that are playing in the very intro. This is what the patch looks like. It's just squares, and I think that's pretty much it. So speaking of which, while I'm here, I'll just go through how it sounds in the intro, which is like this. So yeah, really simple. All that's happening is it has some vibrato that is being automated like that to kind of make it more interesting, and that's layered with the blinker that we went through before. Like that, so that kind of continues once the beat drops in as well. And we have a couple more layers here. We have some detuned saws. Again, something's not playing there. Just decided to mute that. Yeah, and that kind of gives it the really big kind of ravey sound that we want. These are detuned, and they're also really wide here. Yeah, so I've got it on Unisono 4, and we have it actually on a noise LFO, and that's kind of meaning this area here just moves around constantly and makes it really wide. I usually find when I'm making these big super saw chords is have something really centered, like the square wave kind of chord that I just showed you, and have something really wide, and that way, no matter how you're listening to it in mono or stereo, it's gonna sound really good. It's still gonna come through. And then finally, penultimately, we have this buzz sound, which is, again, I'm still kind of using this technique from Valentin's tutorial from a long time ago. It's just a really gritty saw bass, yeah, with a bunch of distortion. Very simple. But that's playing, I think, either the octave of the sub or an octave above is where I usually put that to fill in that kind of low mids to low frequency stuff. And now finally, there's just a white noise channel, which just sounds like that. So altogether, it sounds like this. Next up, let's see what we've got. We have the same chord that I've just filtered, I'm pretty sure, over here. So in the second section of the intro, it cuts out some of the layers to make space for that Rayman lead I showed you. Yeah, so it sounds like this. And here I've just taken a piece of the chord and bit crushed it. I use a lot of bit crush in my tracks. Yeah, just to kind of fill in that space there. And then here for the build, we have that same chord but held and filtered. Yeah, so that's pretty simple. And then I think what I've done is I've pitched it up. Yeah, so the build does this thing where it pitches up, but there are these sections here where it goes down as well. So it's like da 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 do da 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 do like that. So that's what happens to the chord as well. It's good to have everything kind of pitching up if you're doing that for your build at the same time. Kind of just feels huge when you kind of make all these elements come up at the same time. So now we are getting into the basses, which, I mean, so I'm not like a huge sound design guy, surprise, surprise. I'm a lot more interested in the ideas and concepts of the track and how the basses are put together, the patterns. So in an effort to make sure Logic 9 doesn't obliterate itself, I've moved all my serum patches into a separate project that I'll go through a bit later on. But for now, I will go through all of the massive patches. So we have this sound right here, which is called Grizzly. And here's the massive patch right here. Let's make sure it isn't muted. There we go. So a weird thing about Massive is sometimes it kind of changes the timbre of the sound each time you load it, which is kind of annoying. But so the thing is with my sound designing is I make patches and I just put them away, and then I go and root through and find them and go, what the hell was I doing? So I mean, this pitch is not making any sense, but hopefully by just showing you the patch, you can kind of get a sense of what's going on. So that's what it sounds like, and then there's some MIDI that changes the notes here. Yeah, and I think at a later point in the track, I was messing with this pitchfall sound. Hopefully. I super can't remember. Yeah. Yeah, there's a point where it gets really screechy, and I think I automated that pitchfall section there. Yeah, I'm not a sound design master. I don't, I make the sound, I'm like, all right, move on, let's go. So I have this put into audio. There's a bit of room reverb in there, which makes it sound like this. You can see as well, I've kind of duplicated this section to make it kind of fit. Once I'm in audio, I'm just happy being in audio really, and I can kind of mess around with stuff. There's also a bit crushed layer to kind of give it a bit more crunch. And more of that kind of old school kind of yoy sound. So together it sounds like this. Yeah, so this sound I unfortunately did not save the patch for, but it's a pretty simple sound. And there's a variation that sounds like this. So this is without any of the effects. Just a really simple kind of wob sound. And I put a ton of reverb on there, cut the lows, and put OTT on to let that reverb open up, and sounds like that. So then again, I've exported that to audio so that I can cut off that tail like that, so it doesn't spill over into everything else. Yeah, we also have the same sound, but with, I think, even more reverb on top of that for the build. Yeah, it's kind of a background ambience, and I've reversed that as well. What I really like doing in the build is kind of hinting at what you're going to be hearing in the drop. So having this kind of sound in the background is like, ooh, that sounds like the bass that's going to be happening in the drop. And then sure enough, that is exactly what hits on beat 1. So you have this kind of effect.
I'm on a side quest.
And after that, we have a bunch of other basses. I might just dive into the serum patches now, actually, because everything's pretty basic sounds, really. I have a trombone layer that I've put over certain sections. And to emphasize this kind of wobble at the end of this section. And then over here in the kind of second drop, we have this chomp sound that's layered with more of a kind of melodic siren thing, and also layered with the trombone. So you've already heard what the trombone sounds like. This is the chomp sound that's in Serum. I'll go through that in just a second, and then this is a massive patch, which is, again, really, really simple. Apparently it's called Fifth Element Wob. Yep, looks like that. Figure it out based on that, basically. Pretty simple. Yeah, so we have a couple more sounds, but I think the main sound I want to go into is the main wobble. There's also a couple of things that are labeled as AU5, and the reason that they're called that is because they are built around a technique that my dude AU5 does. There's a really good tutorial on it called, it's the Hyper Growl tutorial, so I won't necessarily go into that, but it's a very similar technique to what he uses. Yeah, and then other than that, it's the sub bass. So I'm going to duck into the Serum project right now to just go through the rest of the patches. Cool, so here is the main wobble sound. And the reason why it's labeled Reflect Wob is because it sounds very, very damn similar to a track I released on my own label by my friend Reflect. So that's why it's labeled like that. So this is really simple. You have a Juno wavetable, and I've put the sync up halfway, but basically you can affect how this wobble sounds. You know, completely change the timbre by just changing the sync position here. You know, you can make it really, really squeak up there. But this is so simple, this patch, and yeah. So that's that. It's so simple, and then I've just put these into different Serum patches for just different LFO rates to kind of build this full wobbly riff, and then I've just moved the MIDI into each of the channels so that they do that. So here's this AU5 Hyper Growl kind of thing I was talking about. Again, I would definitely recommend going to his tutorial for that, because it's really cool, and you can make completely crazy sounds, and it changes every time you do it, but this is what it sounds like. And again, this is a kind of patch where you can tweak some very small things to make quite big differences. So if I put the wavetable position somewhere else, it sounds completely different. Yeah, so that's that. This is this chomp sound that was layered with the trombone and the other massive patch, and it sounds like this. So most of what makes this sound kind of unique is this FMing from B at really high octave sine wave. So without it, you know, it's a really simple, just kind of dirty square sound, and then this kind of gives it that kind of warble. And you can see if I turn up the FMing from B, you get more of the warble, but I've kind of turned that down so you only get a bit of it. And we have a couple more sounds here. We have, this is a sound I use in a lot of my tracks, and I think is kind of most unique to me. I haven't really heard a lot of people doing this kind of thing. The reason why it's called retro is because it's based on this retro speaking wavetable. It sounds like this. So here I've kind of cut this LFO into different steps, and that moves the wavetable position here, and it also changes this flange filter point. What I really like about this is you can get very melodic sounds out of something that's very gritty. Something I really like to do is have a track sound melodic and heavy at the same time. So without the flange filter, you've already got those 3 different timbres out of that wavetable, and then that's accentuated by the flange filter. You know, generally flange filters, comb filters are very good at having boosting the really melodic tonal sections of a bass, because you have all these peaks and troughs here, and changing the wavetable position to match those and kind of accentuate different points of the waveform, you can get some really interesting, very tonal sounds. And again, this is one of these things where I can change the cutoff here and it sounds completely different. Well, not necessarily completely different. But yeah, or I can change the LFO to have even more drastic steps between each of these points on the LFO. So yeah. And then finally we have this Mindbender sound. I don't know why I called it that, but yeah, this is more of a growly sound. I plugged in the audio of a massive patch I'd made and decided to make it into a completely different sound in Serum. Basically just having this LFO control the kind of wobble of it, and this controlling the opening of this filter to accentuate that quite nice whistly sound within the growl. If you'd like to take a shot at remixing this, all of the stems are going to be available in the description. Go wild, do whatever you want. I really don't mind people messing around with my stems. I see them a lot more as tools, and my ideas are what's going to be unique. So go do some crazy remixes. I'm looking forward to hearing what you come up with. Yep, my name is Chime. Thanks for watching, and see you in whatever next tutorial or whatever the hell, really. See ya.
Hey guys, thanks for watching another video from Disciple. Make sure you like and subscribe, and see you next time. Is that right?
I'm on a Sidequest.